It was the early morning of September 2nd, 1666, when a small fire broke out in Thomas Farriner's bakery on Pudding Lane in the heart of London. At first, it seemed like a manageable blaze, but what would happen over the next few days would forever change the face of London. This is the story of the Great Fire of London, a disaster that ravaged the city, destroying homes, landmarks, and forever altering its architecture and planning. The conditions in London in the mid-17th century were ripe for such a disaster. London was a bustling city with over 300,000 residents, but it was also overcrowded, with buildings tightly packed together and narrow streets crisscrossing through its neighborhoods. Most buildings were made from timber and pitch, both of which were extremely flammable. The summer of 1666 had been particularly dry, leaving the wooden houses and shops like tinderboxes, just waiting for a spark. Thomas Farriner's bakery on Pudding Lane was the spark. Around midnight, Farriner had closed his bakery for the night, unaware that a small flame had been left burning. Within a few hours, the fire spread through the bakery and ignited nearby homes. In a matter of moments, the fire leaped from building to building, engulfing Pudding Lane. The fire spread so quickly that by the time people woke in the early hours of the morning, the streets around Pudding Lane were already ablaze. Residents attempted to douse the flames with buckets of water, but the fire was too powerful. Driven by a strong easterly wind, the fire raged through the city, moving toward the River Thames. In the 17th century, firefighting methods were primitive. London had no organized fire department, and the only real way to stop a fire was to create fire breaks by tearing down buildings in its path. However, Lord Mayor Sir Thomas Bloodworth, who had been called to the scene, hesitated, unsure whether to order the demolition of homes and businesses. His indecision allowed the fire to spread unchecked, with devastating consequences. As the flames intensified, panic set in. Families fled their homes, carrying what possessions they could salvage, but for many there was no escape. The fire moved faster than anyone could have anticipated, and within hours whole neighborhoods were engulfed. Those who lived along the River Thames attempted to escape by boat, but soon the flames reached the wharves where stores of tar, oil and coal were kept, causing massive explosions and fueling the fire further. Over the next 3 days, the fire continued its relentless march through London. It destroyed St. Paul's Cathedral, the spiritual heart of the city. The grand cathedral had stood for over 600 years, but it was no match for the flames. Its stone walls were weakened by the intense heat, and the lead roof melted and flowed down the streets like a river of molten metal. Many other churches, homes, and businesses met a similar fate. As the fire ravaged London, King Charles II took an active role in trying to stop it. He personally joined the efforts to create fire breaks, ordering the demolition of buildings in the fire's path. Soldiers and civilians alike worked day and night, tearing down homes and shops to stop the spread of the fire. By September 5th, the winds began to die down, and with the help of these fire breaks, the flames finally began to subside. When the fire was finally extinguished, the scale of the destruction was immense. An estimated 13,200 homes, 87 churches, and numerous public buildings, including Guildhall and the Royal Exchange, had been destroyed. The fire had consumed an area of 436 acres, reducing a significant portion of the city to smoldering ruins. Miraculously, the official death toll was reported as low, with only 6 recorded deaths, though historians believe the true number may have been higher, as many of the city's poor may have been incinerated in the blaze without record. The fire left 100,000 people homeless. In the days following the fire, people were forced to live in tents and makeshift shelters, and many fled the city altogether. The loss of homes, businesses, and infrastructure was devastating, but out of the ashes of the Great Fire of London, a new city would rise. The task of rebuilding London fell to Sir Christopher Wren, an architect and scholar who would go on to redesign some of the city's most important buildings. Wren's plans included wider streets, brick and stone buildings, and a series of grand structures that would reshape London's skyline. St. Paul's Cathedral, which had been destroyed in the fire, was one of Wren's most famous projects. The new St. Paul's, completed in 1710, became an iconic symbol of London's resilience and renewal. Wren's vision for a modernised London included strict new building regulations. After the fire, it was decreed that all new buildings in London were to be constructed of brick or stone, and wooden buildings were no longer allowed. These new building codes helped ensure that a disaster of this scale would never happen again. In the immediate aftermath of the fire, rumours spread that the fire had been started deliberately by foreigners, particularly the French and Dutch with whom England was at war. An immigrant named Robert Hubert falsely confessed to starting the fire, and despite evidence that he was not even in the city when the fire began, he was executed. The fire also fueled anti-Catholic sentiment, with many believing it was a plot by Catholics to destroy Protestant London. While the fire brought untold destruction, it also provided an opportunity for a fresh start. Before the fire, London was a medieval city with narrow streets and tightly packed wooden buildings. The fire allowed for a more modern city to be built, with open spaces, wide streets, and more fire-resistant buildings. It also led to advances in firefighting techniques, including the development of more efficient fire engines and the establishment of insurance companies that would cover losses from fires. The Great Fire of London is remembered as a tragedy that forever changed the face of the city, but it also represents a moment of rebirth. London rose from the ashes, stronger and more resilient than ever before. The fire's legacy can still be seen today in the city's architecture, its layout, and its sense of pride in overcoming one of the greatest disasters in its history. The story of the Great Fire has been immortalized in books, paintings, and monuments, including the Monument to the Great Fire of London, a towering column that stands near the site where the fire began. It serves as a reminder of the destruction that occurred, but also of the strength and determination of the people of London in rebuilding their city. The Great Fire of London was a pivotal moment in the city's history, shaping its future in profound ways. It is a story of tragedy, resilience, and the indomitable spirit of a city that, time and time again, has risen from the ashes